Okay.
Okay. The time is 6:15. I'll call to order the hybrid zoning board of appeals meeting. We'll have the roll call.
Sadler,
Here.
Wisner, here, Durin. Here. Blagoff, I don't believe has logged on yet. Risto, oh yes, Risto is there. Blagoff? Could you unmute yourself, please, Risto? Okay, well, he's here.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. Hecht? Here. And Kelly?
Here.
We have a motion to approve the agenda. So move.
Second.
Second by all in favor.
Aye.
We have a motion to approve the minutes for the December 19th, 2024 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals and the related documents that is entitled Finding of Fact, Conclusions of Law, and Format Determination that no decision could be reached.
I make a motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
At this point in time, we're going to open a public hearing. It's 6:18 on the petition for grant of variance for the property located at 10631 Little Sister Road that was filed by attorney Daniel Goronsky on behalf of Douglas B. Roberts and Ellen B. Roberts. We have a motion.
We're just opening
Yeah, you just declare that the hearing is open.
All right, very cool. The next item is, I will read process of how we're going to follow this meeting. Good evening. My name is Tom Sadler. I am the chair of the Village Zoning Board of Appeals. My fellow Zoning Board of Appeals members who are present this evening are Pat Wisner, Liz Hecht, Deb Dern. Christo Blagoyev is on the screen. Kelly Carey, who is an alternate member of the board, as well as the village attorney, Randy Nesbitt. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a quasi-judicial appeals board that is comprised entirely of village residents. The members of the board who are bound by the provisions of Wisconsin statutes are formally appointed by the village board and we have been charged with hearing appeals and decisions that are made by the village administrator and or the village's plan commission, as well as requests for variances. On January 16th, 2025, attorney Daniel Gorowski filed a petition for grant of variance, as well as supporting documents on behalf of Douglas and Ellen Roberts, who own the property that is located at 10631 Little Sister Road. That property is located in the single family, quote, parentheses, R1, parentheses, zoning district. In their petition and the supporting documentation, which was filed in a timely fashion and was included in the digital packets for this meeting, Mr. and Mrs. Roberts request a variance from section 66.0311 parentheses D parentheses of the village municipal code, which limits the height of a principal building to a maximum height of 35 feet. The Roberts are proposing that they be allowed to construct a home with an overall maximum height of 37 feet 11 inches. A public hearing will be conducted regarding this matter, and anyone who testifies at the hearing must first be sworn in by the village attorney. I have been informed that Julie Schmelzer, the village administrator, will not be able to attend this hearing as she has another obligation, and therefore a staff report was prepared by Ms. Schmelzer, which will be formally introduced by myself into evidence. After the board members have had an opportunity to jointly review the staff report, Attorney Borowski and/or Mr. and Mrs. Roberts will be allowed to present rebuttal testimony, and then any correspondence that was received regarding this matter, either for or against, will be introduced into evidence. Once all of the letters have been read, anyone who is present who wishes to testify in favor of Mr. and Mrs. Roberts' request for a variance will be given an opportunity to do so, and then the board will hear from anyone who is opposed to granting the variance. Finally, Attorney Borowski will be granted one final opportunity to present brief rebuttal and a closing statement. And at that point, board members will be allowed to ask questions if they have any. Finally, the public hearing will be closed. Once the public hearing is officially closed, discussion and action will take place regarding Mr. and Mrs. Roberts' request for a variance. In accordance with the provisions of the village board, committee and commissions, bylaws, only the regular members of the zoning board of appeals will be allowed to participate in the ensuing discussion or making any of the related decisions. Therefore, from that point forward, Mr. Kelly will no longer be allowed to participate in the meeting and cannot vote on any motions that are made. In order for a variance to be granted by the zoning board of appeals, must make the following findings by a preponderance of the evidence. A, there will be preservation of intent. B, exceptional circumstances exist. C, hardship exists. That finding will be based upon conditions unique to the property rather than considerations personal to Mr. and Mrs. Roberts. D, the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights possessed by other property owners in the same zoning district and will not harm the public interest. The variance will not create substantial detriments. This is number E. The variance will not create substantial detriment to adjacent properties and will not materially impair or be contrary to the purpose and the spirit of the zoning code or public interest. Economic hardship and self-imposed hardship are not grounds for granting of a request of variance, and any hardship that is found must be based upon conditions unique to the property rather than considerations personal to the owner. I have one other comment, and that was, let me get that straight. Attorney Borowski, in your documents, it's on our page 13. You wrote on a paragraph, this variance is necessary for the Roberts preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights possessed by other residents in the same zoning district. In fact, during the appeal hearing, a board member mentioned that her lower level walkout home is likely over 35 feet when applying the village interpretation of the definition to the building height. The village administrator reviewed the file. It wasn't on the building home, but it was on a separate building which was built that could be used for storage or garage facility, and that her findings were on the file for the construction of that building is that its average is 30 feet of height for the entire unit. There is a small raise in that at one end, but overall it's 30 feet in height, and 32 feet would cover the piece that is sitting on one end.
Mr. Sadler, with all due respect, could I ask a question about that? Just before we get, because that's new information to me. Could you read that again? Did you say the average height?
Did I say the average height? The height
Is that-
of the building is 30 feet. According to her information to me, is 30 feet, and at the end of the building, there's a piece that goes up 2 feet. So for our purposes, you could say that it is, the total height is 32 feet, the length of the building.
But again, before you said 30 feet, did you
Trying to
read?
get into this.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. We can move on.
Nothing to do with tonight's meeting.
I agree.
We're trying to clear up something that became confusing. At this time, at 6:28 p.m., I would like to call the public hearing to order.
Okay, now I have to read the public hearing notice, Tom, okay?
Yep.
Okay, notice is hereby given that the Village of Sister Bay Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, February 19th at 6:15 p.m. for the purpose of considering a petition for grant of variance. The petition will be heard at the Sister Bay Liberty Grove Fire Station at 2258 Mill Road. Douglas B. Roberts and Ellen B. Roberts petition for a variance from section 66.0311 sub D or sub 4 of the municipal code, which limits the height of a principal building to a maximum height of 35 feet. The Roberts propose to build a home with an overall maximum height of 37 feet 11 inches. This property is located at 10631 Little Sister Road and is in a single family residence R1 zoning district.
Okay, our next order of business then will be the staff report.
Mhm.
I will read the administrator's staff report, which she prepared for this meeting. Excuse me. The introduction. Per state statutes and the municipal code, a variance can only be issued if the following apply. I have prepared the below format so that you can check the boxes to determine if the variance meets statutes and or requirements of the code. Wisconsin State Statute 62.23 parentheses 7 parentheses E parentheses 7 explains you can approve a variance only if 1. The variance from the code will not be contrary to the public interest where owing to conditions, a literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance will result in practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship, so that the spirit of the ordinance shall be observed. Public safety and welfare secured and substantial justice done. 2. The statutes further read, a property owner bears the burden of proving unnecessary hardship by demonstrating the strict compliance with the zoning code would unreasonably prevent the property owner from using the property for the permitted use or would render conformance with the code to be unnecessarily burdensome. The owner must therefore demonstrate conformance means we would leave the owner with no reasonable use of the property, except of course, unless they got a variance. Number 3, lastly, statutes require the owner bear the burden of proof to prove the unnecessary hardships is based on conditions unique to the property rather than personal to the property owner, and that the hardship was not created by the property. Lastly, remember variances run with the land, so any decision will mean the variance are warranted forever. The code requires section 66.1607 findings. No area variance to the provisions of this chapter shall be granted by the board unless it finds by a preponderance of the evidence that all emphasis added, the following facts and conditions exist, and so indicates such in the minutes of its proceedings. 1, preservation of intent. No area variance shall be granted that is not consistent with the purpose and intent of the regulations for the district in which the development is located. 2, exceptional circumstances. There must be unique circumstances or conditions applying to a lot or parcel or structure that do not apply generally to other properties or uses in the same zoning classification within 1,000 feet of the subject property, and the granting of the area variance should not be of so general or recurrent a nature as to suggest the zoning chapter should be changed. 3, hardship. Economic hardship and self-imposed hardship are not grounds for an area variance. The staff did not add emphasis, rather that is how the code is written. It's blackened. It was that particular sentence is dark black. No area variance shall be granted solely based on economic gain or loss. The hardship must be based on conditions unique to the property rather than considerations personal to the owner. 4, preservation of property rights. The variance must be necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights possessed by other properties in the same zoning district and same vicinity. 5, absence of detriment. No area variance shall be granted that will create substantial detriment to adjacent property or that will materially impair to be contrary to the purpose and spirit of this chapter or public interest. Petition. The petition for variance submitted explained the request is made based on the following. 1, the petitioner argues topography and the steep slope create an unnecessary hardship, preventing the robbers from complying with the 35 feet height limit. 2, they also argue complying with the height limit on this particular lot would require a significant reduction to the pitch of the roof, resulting in a substandard building design and compromises the safety of the home. 3, the petitioner has a prosthetic leg and altering the natural topography of the terrain to raise the rear elevation may pose a risk to Mr. Roberts' safe navigation of the property by foot. 4, the variance is necessary for their preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights possessed by other residents in the same zoning district. 5, the proposed height does not create a substantial detriment to any adjacent property, nor is it contrary to the spirit of the code or the public interest. 8 neighbors support this request. staff information. In response to petitioner's statement that the topography creates an unnecessary hardship, preventing the owner from complying with the height limit. While topography can be a unique property feature, preventing someone from complying with the code, regulations state that a unique property feature warrants a variance if a state statute, the code would unreasonably prevent the property owner from using the property for the permitted use, or would render conformance with the code to be unnecessarily burdensome. The owner must therefore demonstrate strict conformance means we would leave the owner with no other reasonable use of the property. So the question then is, the topography so severe, it would prevent the property from being developed with a permitted use, parentheses, home, parentheses, or would conformance to the height limit leave them no reasonable use of the property. Below is the topography of the Roberts lot per Door County GIS site and contour maps. It may be difficult to read, but by the road, the lot is between 618 feet dash 620 feet in elevation. And at the building setback line, it is about 612 feet dash 613 feet. By the water, it is about 592 feet at the building setback line. So if there is a grade change of about 20 feet in elevation, but on October 10th, 2024, staff received plans from the owner's own engineering firm, parentheses, Verbitzer, parentheses, which actually showed the home laid out on the lot, parentheses, a site plan, parentheses, and a grade change of just 14 feet where the home would be built. And the plan, parentheses, Exhibit B, parentheses, submitted by the Roberts with the petition for grant of variance shows a grade change of 612.6 at the corner of the garage and 602 at the westernmost end of the home / lake room, showing a grade change of even less, just 10 feet 6 inches. So now we have to look at the above and determine if this 10 feet 6 inch elevation change is unique to the property and does it prevent them from having a reasonable use of the property, parentheses, a home, parentheses. Well, the first obvious fact is if they didn't build to the maximum allowable setbacks and instead built in line with the adjacent neighbor, the home could be 87 feet deep, which is quite a spacious home. And the grade change, if we use the GIS data, would be just 14 feet. For purposes of comparing apples to apples, I'll use the GIS data herein. Let's look at the adjacent neighbor to the north. The grade change is 13 feet, parentheses. This doesn't include the deck, parentheses. Based on this, a home can be built on the lot, so the topography isn't unique to the Roberts. And because a reasonable use of the property exists, the variance is not justified. Then, if, parentheses, I argue a more than reasonable size single family residence can be built on the lot, that being a home 75 feet wide and 87 feet deep, which is a 6,500 square foot home. Even 2 lots north, the grade change at the home is about 14 feet. So it's not the topography that creates the hardship. Rather, it's the owner's personal preference to build to the maximum limits of the lot, where the lot starts getting steeper. As shown below, the closer you get to the water, the steeper the lot gets. And neighboring lots to the north are actually steeper by the water than the petitioner's lot. Simply, if the owner's preference wasn't to be as close as possible to the water or build such a large home, their topography wouldn't be an issue, and arguably above, it isn't a unique characteristic. Note on the below contour map, the closer lines, the steeper the lot. So the next page is basically a map. Let's assume for a second the topography does create a unique situation. Did it result in the neighboring homes also having to exceed the 35 feet height? The following is from the village files. And it's a list of properties. These are be the fire numbers that I'll refer to. 10611 is a new home, similar roof lines as 10637 with a mix of pitches and flat roofs. Road max height is 18 feet, rear max height is 27 feet 6 inches. 10627 is a grandfathered home, no heights in file. And that person signed a letter. 10637 is a new home. Application says 16 feet, but plans show 3 heights, 2 pitches, and a flat roof. The road is 16 feet, and the highest point in the rear is 29 feet. Plans show a sloped stepped lot, much as the appellant. The next home is 10643 is a new home. It's 25 feet 6 inches at the road and 26 feet 6 inches at the highest point in the rear. They sent a letter to 10647 grandfather has no applications indicating height. Also sent a letter. 10652 is a grandfather home, but rebuilt. The new home is 23 feet 6 inches on both sides. 10661 is sent a letter. His grandfather, 1 remodel, no elevation drawings. Work looks like the work was all done within the existing walls and roof. 10670 is a grandfather home. It has 1 addition. Plans show both sides at 15 feet. 10673 sent a letter. It has a guest house, which has at its highest point is 33 feet 8 inches, and a home that is 33 feet on both sides. 10674 is 2 additions, each 15 feet. 10683 is sent a letter, is an addition. Application says 28 feet. Plans show a sloped stepped lot, much like the appellant. The home is 23 feet at the road and 32 feet in the rear. 10691 sent a letter, is a new home, 18 feet. 10709 is sent a letter. It was a replacement for a burned home, which has a height of 24 feet. 10717 is a new home and no elevation used. The application says a 2-story with a 31-foot height. Tax photos show a standard home with a steep pitch roof. Front appears to be about the same as the back. 10721 sent a letter, a new home, no plans, file says 22-foot height, and the addition will be 24 feet height in the front and the back, plus a 5-foot crawl space. 10723, no, is a grandfather home, one addition 12 feet. 10725 as a grandfather home, one addition 16 feet. 10727 is a new home, which is 17 feet 9 inches with a attached garage addition, which is 18 feet. Plus another addition, which is 18 feet plus a 3-foot crawl space. 10729 is a grandfathered home with a porch addition of 10 foot 6 inches. And 10733 is a new home with a road height of 27 feet and a water height of 28.5 inches. Based on what others with similar lots now or have built after zoning, it is very plausible to build a home in these lots and not exceed 35 feet in height. Simply, if the neighbors can all build on their property, which is sloped, and not exceed 35 feet in height, the topography is not a unique property feature or hardship warranting a variance. It also doesn't require a home to exceed 35 feet. This data also counters the petitioner's argument that complying with the height limit on this particular lot would require a significant reduction to the pitch of the roof, resulting in a substandard building design and compromises the safety of the home. Interesting though, the adjacent neighbor's new home, which was built per the Wisconsin Uniform Dwelling Code, which is a code to ensure homes are built to a specific height and safety standards, has a maximum roof pitch of 3 to 12, meaning the roof rises 10 inches for every 10 inches of horizontal run. The petitioner proposes roof pitches of 10-10 and 12-10. Parentheses, I understand the Roberts may not like the adjacent neighbor's design, but my point is the new homes in the area have all been able to design their homes to meet Wisconsin's health and safety approval and remain under 35 feet in height. So the argument that any other design would compromise safety is simply not true. 35-foot high buildings are not necessary for a reasonable use of the property, nor are they required due to the unique property features, but appear instead to solely be a matter of personal preference. Undoubtedly, plans show a gala beautiful home, but the design is not the only design that can be built on this lot and is not necessarily for safety as alleged. I think we are all aware, and neighboring homes prove, homes can be built on sloped lots and can meet a state's safety standards, the Uniform Dwelling Code, without being limited solely to the design proposed by the Roberts. The design appears to be one's personal preference and not caused by the topography of the lot. Thirdly, the petitioner says they need a variance because the owner has a prosthetic leg and altering the natural topography of the terrain to raise the rear elevation may pose a risk to Mr. Roberts' safe navigation of the property by foot. As much as we can empathize with the owner, the economic hardship, the board has been trained and understands variances cannot be granted based on personal or economic hardship. Additionally, the village isn't requiring them to alter the topography. If elevation changes are a mobility concern, the owner may want to consider a one-level home instead of a home with stairs or forego the sliding doors on the lowest level, which open to the steep slope by the water. Fourth, they state the variance is necessary for their preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights possessed by other residents in the same zoning district. What are the property rights possessed by others in the same district? It is the ability to use their lot for the same permitted uses, which in this case is a single-family home. What it is not, building whatever someone wants without regard for codes. Again, this is a buildable lot and can accommodate a very large home, and no one is denying them that right to develop their property. Lastly, they argue the proposed height does not create a substantial detriment to any adjacent property, nor is it contrary to the spirit of the code or public interest, and support their point by providing letters of support from neighbors. Unfortunately, public interest isn't determined by how many letters one submits or the number of people that speak in support of a variance. After all, the public includes those traversing roads and water who may not be supportive of a taller building. According to the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, all variance applicants must show that the requested variance will not be contrary to the public interest and requires the zoning board to consider the purposes of the ordinance at issue and determine whether the relief requested is consistent with the public interest, such as the variance should be granted, and whether a variance should subvert the purpose of the zoning restriction to such an extent that it must be denied. So let's look at the zoning ordinance and the purpose of the zoning restriction. Purpose is parentheses, chapter 66, section 66.0102 parentheses. The purpose of this chapter is to promote the health, safety, aesthetics, and general welfare of this community. Height is discussed in the architectural standards section of chapter 66, section 66.1050 parentheses 6 parentheses. The purpose of these standards is to assist the village plan commission, the architectural review board, and the public with a standard to achieve quality in architectural design and to create a sense of place through appropriate use and composition of materials, architectural styles, and land use, planning and design. Based upon the League's explanation that when considering whether a variance should be granted, the board must consider public interest and whether it would meet the purpose of zoning restriction. The board needs to determine if a variance from the height limitation still meets the purposes outlined above. Conclusion, based upon the above, the staff argues the petition for grant of variance submitted by Roberts does not satisfy all of the required findings of Wisconsin statutes 62.23 parentheses 7 parentheses E parentheses 7 and chapter 66 section 66.1607, and a variance should therefore be denied. Okay. We'll be back next.
Okay, now Randy swears in Attorney Goronsky.
Okay.
Now it's time for the presentation of the applicant. Mr. Goronsky, are you going to present first?
Would you please unmute yourself? Thank you.
Yep, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Okay. You raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You should be able to share your screen if that's what you wanted to do. Whoops, you have to unmute again.
Okay. Let's see if this can work.
Can hear you very well,
Can you hear me now?
Mhm.
very well.
Okay, great. Okay.
And we're seeing your PowerPoint, so you're good.
Okay, great. I'm going to try to share this. Okay. Got everyone?
Yep, we're all here.
Okay, great. Mr. Sadler, thank you for reading that. Look, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I know it's a lot to take some time out of your evening, so we really appreciate it. Again, my name is Dan Goronsky. I'm a partner at Michael Best and Friedrich, and I'm here representing Doug and Ellen Roberts in this variance appeal. I'll be sharing this presentation here on my screen. Just note that I've made a couple updates just based on the staff report that was sent to us prior to the meeting, and that was just read. So I did make slight tweaks, but you'll see those here. I'm not really going to go into the table of contents, but again, because you received these materials in advance. But look, our variance request is really simple. Doug and Ellen are asking for a variance to approve the issuance of a zoning permit for their construction plans, despite the village's interpretation of the definition of building height as set forth in the Village's Sister Bay zoning code. As this board may recall, the village's interpretation of the code is that the 35-foot maximum height limit is measured from the lowest foundation to the highest peak, despite clear language in the code that the measurement is to be made from the front grade and is supported by a picture. But we believe that granting a variance in this instance is a reasonable yet permissible solution to this matter. And despite the staff report that was delivered and just read by Mr. Sadler, look, we respectfully disagree with that and we'll call out many portions that we have an issue with in this presentation. As you'll clearly see, and I'm going to kind of pull, I don't want to do that. As you'll clearly see in this picture, every single section of this home is under 35 feet. So if you're looking at it from the front, the height of it is 27 feet 5 inches. If you're looking at it from the north side, each section alone, the garage is 24 feet 11 inches. The middle of the house, as the slope goes down, is 34 feet 2 inches, and the rear back is 30 feet flat. Same goes for the north view of, I'm sorry, that is yes, that is the north view of the property. I'm sorry, south view. Again, from the back, 30 feet flat. From the middle, as the slope's going down, 27 feet 5 inches, and the garage is 24 feet 11 inches. It is only from this back picture right here that we are over the height requirement by 2 feet 11 inches, despite, as I want to point out here, this top roof line being set back from where the actual rear of the house is. But that's really what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about this 2 feet 11 inches. So I'm going to get past this. Look, before I get into the meat of our presentation and our arguments that support the granting of this variance, I really want to briefly address that staff report that was circulated by Ms. Melzner's and that was just read. Not only does that report contain glaring misstatements of Wisconsin law, which I'll address in this testimony, and which I believe should invalidate most, if not all, of her arguments against us, but it also contains false and other misleading statements, seemingly in an effort to serve her own agenda. I find it really peculiar that in other publicly available minutes of variance hearings that were presented to this board, Ms. Schmelner has been clear that her job is to present facts and not to suggest recommendations to this board. For example, I'm pulling up the staff report from a variance appeal in September of last year, where she clearly states, in my position, I am to provide you facts and code information to help you determine whether the request meets state statutes and municipal code. And in her last sentence, she goes, it is not my position in a variance case to make recommendations. However, as you just saw and read and heard, and you probably saw in your packets, I mean, wow. This seems to be the first time that Ms. Schmelzner has attempted to influence this board in its decision making and a variance hearing, at least publicly, which we consider highly unprecedented and inappropriate. But look, I don't want to sidetrack from our strong reasons that support the granting of this variance that I'll address. But I'd be remiss to bring up that Ms. Melzer's application of the code to the Roberts attempt to construct this home to date has been nothing short of punitive. And as I'll show in this presentation, what's more disturbing and what the Roberts will address later are the disgusting and discriminatory comments and suggestions for the Roberts when Ms. Melzer discusses Mr. Roberts' disability. So with that, look, I want to provide a little bit more background. The existing structure on this lot is 100 years old. It's 616 square feet. It's not suitable for year-round use. Every year, the Roberts have to winterize the cottage in September or October, depending on the weather, where it really sits dormant until spring. Therefore, a new construction on this lot is required to allow the Roberts' occupancy and year-round use of the property for its permitted purpose. So again, here are some pictures. This is from down in the yard, not exactly up on the street, but this is the view, somewhat of a street view. This picture here is a picture from the lake view, and you can see the steep slope going up to the house. You all recall that back in December, look, we appealed the village's interpretation of the code, and that appeal was unsuccessful, right? It was a 3-3 split vote, which we discovered is fairly unprecedented for this board to come to. And ultimately, we've been issued no formal decision from the village on that decision, leaving us really with an inadequate means to make any litigious appeal if we wanted to. So I want to be really clear here. Despite our disagreements with how the village has interpreted the code, that's not what we're arguing today. It's not what I'm arguing today. We're appealing for this variance to allow the Roberts to build a home that's 2 feet 11 inches over the village's interpretation of the code's height requirements. So first, pursuant to Wisconsin law, and this is something that I want to call it differentiates what is fact and what was in the staff report. Pursuant to Wisconsin law, there are 2 types of variances. One, there's an area variance, which is a modification to dimensional, physical, or locational requirements such as setback or height requirements. And 2, there's a use variance, which allows use of a land for a purpose that's not otherwise permitted by a zoning ordinance. And I want to be crystal clear here. This here is an appeal by us for an area variance. The Roberts know they have the ability to build a home on this property. That's not what we're arguing for. We're appealing for a variance to let us build a home a trivial 2 feet 11 inches over the village's interpretation of the height requirements. So look, the conclusions of law sheet that was provided to you, that's a real accurate reflection of the elements of a variance, not the elements that were in the staff report. So pursuant to Wisconsin law, an area variance can be granted if, look, if, and I'm paraphrasing now, but if it's not contrary to public opinion, where owing to conditions, a literal enforcement of the code would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship, so that the spirit of the code shall be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done, and that there's an unnecessary hardship, and I'm stressing this, is demonstrated that strict compliance with the code would unreasonably prevent the property owner from using the property for its permitted purpose, or what we're going to be demonstrating today, which will render conformity with the code unnecessarily burdensome. And that hardship has to be based on conditions unique to the property, rather personal to the owner. We fully understand that. But look, I think it's extremely problematic that many of Ms. Schmelzer's arguments against this variance is rooted in her misunderstanding and misapplication of Wisconsin law. For example, in the staff report, she either confuses the use variance language to apply to an area variance, or she's attempting to intentionally mislead this board to thinking that a use variance language is a requirement for the Roberts to demonstrate. But as you can see in the state statute language, only for a use variance must a party demonstrate that strict conformance to the code means there's no other reasonable use of the property. In fact, Ms. Schmelzer spends almost 3 pages of her report arguing how no variance should be granted because she believes the lot is not unique and thus the Roberts have the ability to build on it. Look, we know we can build a house. They can build a house on this lot. And that's, again, not what this appeal for a variance is for. This appeal is for an area variance, given that the unique topography of this lot results in a hardship by making compliance with the code, and I'm going to stress this again, practically difficult and unnecessarily burdensome. Thus, again, I want to be clear with this board. that Ms. Schmelner's arguments indicating that no variance should be granted on the basis that the Roberts have the ability to build a home on this lot should be disregarded in all respects and frankly stricken from this record. So look, we're going to show today 5 things. 1, that there's uniqueness on this lot. 2, that a hardship exists because of Robert's compliance with the literal interpretation of the code is unnecessarily burdensome. 3, that a variance preserves the intent of the height requirements of the code. 4, that the variance is necessary for the Roberts' preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights enjoyed by others. And 5, that the variance will not create a substantial detriment to any adjacent property and will not be contrary to the spirit and purpose of the code. So first, look, I want to look at the properties of this lot that truly make it unique. That's going to be the basis of showing our hardship. Look, the natural God-given topography of this lot presents a significant slope that, would only accommodate a single family home with an exposed foundation. In fact, we see that this incline changes 10 to 14 feet within the applicable setback area where construction is permitted. So we believe the lot is unique to surrounding properties because generally the surrounding properties, 1, don't contain such a significant slope within their setbacks, or 2, have a greater level area within their setbacks with no requirement for an exposed foundation. Now, the staff report, again, tries to confuse this board by arguing that just because we can build a home on this lot, that it's not unique and that the reasonable use of the property exists. But once again, that logic is extremely flawed. Just because a house can be built on this lot, it does not mean that the lot is not unique. In the staff report, Ms. Schmelzer tries to minimize the slope of the lot by emphasizing the slope of the ground under where the home is built. But look, per Wisconsin law, uniqueness can apply to the entirety of the lot, not just within the ground under the home. Instead, all we believe we need to show pursuant to the statutes and pursuant to the village's code is that the lot is unique and that conditions apply that don't apply generally to other properties within 1,000 feet. So in the staff report, to again discount the uniqueness of the Roberts lot, Mr. Melzer lists 20 neighboring addresses that Mr. Sadler went through. However, not only is the reasoning for listing those homes flawed, but this list again is completely misleading and it's devoid of all pertinent information that would be relevant to consider for this board. For example, 8 of the 20 homes listed on that are grandfathered homes. So I'm not even sure how the height requirements on those are even applicable. Another 8 of the 20 are clearly built on relatively level setback areas where the front and the rear elevations that are listed are minimally different or where Ms. Schmelzer only strategically lists one elevation. And one of the 20 is a not even a home, but an addition. Ms. Schmelzer also declines or neglects really to mention that a lot of those homes have quote unquote code violations that were approved over time, like garages on roads, boathouses, other features. So look, there are 3 houses on that list that mention having a slope somewhat like the Roberts. And we believe Ms. Schmelzer conveniently leaves out all of the relevant information that this board would have to consider when looking at those, like the actual slope of the properties, the grade, the setback areas, etc. So look, we think this is clear evidence that the Roberts property is indeed unique in that there is a very steep slope within the setback area, and such conditions do not apply generally, again, generally, to others within 1,000 feet. This does not need to be a sole outlier property. It needs to be unique generally to the other houses around it. And thus we believe we satisfy the element of this being unique. So look, I find it really interesting that in the staff report, and I want to highlight this, Ms. Schmelzer states simply, if the owner's preference wasn't to be so close to the water or build such a large home, their topography wouldn't be an issue. Look, that language alone suggests that the topography of this lot is indeed an issue, especially considering the Roberts have a legal right to build a home within the permitted setbacks. And as you'll see in the site plan, I'm going to go back to it here and I'm going to highlight this. This is a deck here. The Roberts they are not taking advantage of the entirety of the setback area. In fact, they could move this house 10 feet back to the water if they wanted to, but they're not. So So look, it's really impractical and burdensome to build a home on this property without an exposed foundation, with a walkout that just would disrupt the natural topography of the lot or lowering the roof. As this slide here, there's a slide here with some words on it. You guys read it. I really want to show you this slide because as it'll show, look, if we were on a flatter piece of property or a piece of property that did not have as much slope, this house would be completely acceptable in all circumstances. So again, looking at the front, it would be 27 feet 5 inches. Looking from the sides, see if we didn't go down as far, right? If the natural topography of the lot was flatter, the highest point of the house would be 34 feet 2 inches. And I'm trying to show that here. Look, the biggest point we're trying to make in this entire variance appeal is that through all this, because of the unique circumstances that exist on this property, there is indeed hardship because compliance with the literal interpretation of the code is unnecessarily burdensome to the Roberts. Unlike Ms. Schmelzer's incorrect application of Wisconsin law and the code, we don't need to somehow prove that a 35-foot high building or a 37-foot building is necessary for reasonable use of the property. We only need to show that our compliance with the code is burdensome here. So to comply with the code, look, the Roberts have two alternatives, both of which, again, we believe is burdensome. One, they could lower the roof line below 35 feet, or two, they could backfill the exposed foundation to create a higher foundation level and put windows in instead of a walkout door. So I'm going to address both of these. With respect to lowering the building height, we know and admit it's possible. It's possible. But I want to reiterate that just because lowering the roof height is possible, it does not mean that it's not burdensome to the Roberts. Lowering the roof line is burdensome because it forces the Roberts into a suboptimal design that can compromise the safety and upkeep of the home. For example, a roof pitch below 1012, the pitch that is proposed by the Roberts, I don't know where the 1212 number came from in the staff report, but the 1012 pitch that was proposed by the Roberts reduces space for insulation, can lead to snow load concerns, can cause slow snow or water runoff, can lead to ice damming in the winters, and can create other maintenance challenges. And now look, while Ms. Schmelzer points out in their staff report that the property directly to the north of the Roberts has a 312 roof pitch, what she neglects to share with this board is that how a 312 roof pitch is one of the minimum accepted by builders, and how there's a metal roof on that house that is required to make that pitch work, especially in our harsh winter climate that we have in Wisconsin and Door County. So I would implore this board to simply look up, Google issues with a 312 metal roof, and you'll see clearly that despite that design being permissible, it is not ideal, and a steeper roof for this lot is preferable for Wisconsin and for the Roberts. In addition, the problems of a suboptimal roof pitch are exacerbated not only by the winters, but the heavy tree cover on this property, which are going to make it really difficult for sunlight to melt the snow and to get in and do its trick. Look, there are almost 50 trees on this lot, a lot of them around 75 feet tall. A steeper roof is much better for this climate and would prevent tree needles and other debris from collecting on the roof as well. So that's lowering the roof. With respect to the other option of potentially raising the foundation level, this option is, again, really impractical and burdensome to the Roberts. If the Roberts were to raise the foundation, as their builder Mark will confirm, it would significantly increase the slope of the property going off the house, which would lead to issues like drainage and erosion control and elevation changes with the neighboring properties, thus having the potential to impact those properties in a negative way. And because of all those things, look, the Roberts and Mark will confirm, if they did that, they would have to put in almost a 7-foot retaining wall on this property. So again, raising the foundation in this home, while possible, is clearly and extremely burdensome to our client. So again, something I want to call out from the staff report. And while Ms. Schmelzer says in her staff report that the village is not requiring my client to alter the topography, she very well suggests it. So you can see in the highlighted sentence, it says, we're not requiring them to alter the topography. Well, in the very next sentence, she's suggesting we do exactly that. So again, to summarize this, forcing the Roberts into a suboptimal roof design or changing the topography of the lot by backfilling it while possible, is burdensome to the properties, period. So I want to show you this slide just from a visual perspective and how the design of the proposed home on this unique piece of property, and this is a proposed design here on the left showing the 3711, and how it appears to be very reasonable. While the alternate set forth to the right, while looking very much the same, and the height measurements in all other areas being exactly the same, presents all these burdensome issues. So again, just another example on how this variance we believe is a very reasonable outcome to the situation. So next, we don't believe that granting this variance is against the public interest. Notably, granting this variance, we don't even think is a detriment to any, it's not a detriment to any neighboring property or the community. As we've presented many times and that are going to be put into evidence, we have letters from the 8 families that own the directly neighboring 13 properties that support this plan. And I know those letters were drafted for the appeal hearing back in December, but we have word from all those neighbors, and they're happy that those letters were submitted with our variance appeal. Look, Ms. Schmelzer tries to discount in that staff report the fact that we have these, and by stating that the public includes those traveling on Little Sister Road and on the water. But for starters, again, Little Sister Road is not a through street. It's a dead end. It's relatively private, and it only has access to private homes and condominiums. So from a public street view, and I can go back to if you want, but again, from that public street view, the height of the home is well below 35 feet at that 27 feet 5 inches. Look, and from the lake view, this home isn't going to be entirely visible from the lake. Again, given the tree cover on this lot, it's going to be extremely difficult to see this home from the lake. Thus, I'm not sure how the height of a home the height of this home would be so patently offensive to the public or detract from the beauty, from the appeal, or the quaintness that the village strives for. So preservation of intent. Look, the granting of this variance preserves the intent of the village's height requirements. The intent of the code and is set forth in the staff report. Again, it's to promote the health, safety, aesthetics, general welfare of the community, to create a sense of place through appropriate building styles, etc. But again, we fail to see how a height overage of 2 feet 11 inches in this instance is so offensive as to not be consistent with the code's purpose and the intent. It's not like the Roberts have come to this board asking for us to approve something that's 35 feet in the front and 50 feet total in the back. That's not what's happening here. Not even 40 feet. Again, we're asking for a variance for 2 feet 11 inches. Finally, we believe this variance is really important for the preservation of the Roberts property rights that are possessed by others. Look, they need to have the ability to construct a home on this lot to replace the 100-year-old cottage that's there, and it's uninhabitable year round. And let me reiterate, the Roberts have every right to build a home on this lot within their permitted setbacks. And that the village, as we've seen, suggesting to us that we build something smaller or something with suboptimal roof design or a raised foundation, it is clearly burdensome to the Roberts when the village does that. So we need this variance to preserve our property rights. So to conclude, again, I very much hope, one, I appreciate you listening. I appreciate the intentness of your listening. I very much hope I've made this board aware of, again, not only some of the troubling misstatements and just misunderstanding of Wisconsin law that was set forth in the staff report, but I really want the board to focus on that conclusions of law summary, which again, which you were provided, and I believe accurately reflect the elements that we need to show. So again, one, this variance is consistent with the purposes and intent of the regulations. We've discussed that, look, it is not so offensive as to violate the health, safety, aesthetics, or general welfare of the Sister Bay community. In fact, the design of it should enhance it. Two, the property is unique. The conditions on it do not apply generally to other properties or uses in the same zoning classification within 1,000 feet. Again, it doesn't need to be an outlier, a one of one. It just needs to be unique as generally applied to others in the area. Three, a hardship exists. Compliance with the literal interpretation of the code renders conformity unnecessarily burdensome. Lowering the roof height presents issues. Backfilling to change the topography presents issues. It is burdensome, and therefore a hardship exists. Four, The variance is necessary to preserve the Roberts' enjoyment of their property. Again, they have every right to build within their allotted setbacks. And again, for the Village of Sister Bay or the zoning administrator to suggest something different just shows that there is a true preservation of rights issue here. And five, look, there won't be a detriment in granting this variance, not to the adjacent properties, not to the neighbors, not to those on Little Sister Road, not to the general public. And I think you'll hear and see today from those I see in the audience and from, again, the letters by the neighbors, you'll see that that is indeed the case. So again, look, I'm gonna deter to Mr. and Mrs. Roberts right now who are going to say a few words, but I thank you for your time.
Chairman, do you want to allow the board to ask questions for Mr. Duronsky before moving on, or do you?
No, I come back.
Okay.
Yeah,
The board will ask questions when he's all done.
Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Roberts are going to add some comments. Is that correct?
Yeah, could you please unmute yourself?
She texted me, she's trying to unmute, but she's not being allowed to unmute.
We're good.
Okay, Mrs. Roberts, can you raise your right hand, please?
Yes,
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
yes.
Thank you.
Hi there. I am Ellen Roberts. First of all, I regret not speaking at the appeal meeting in December, and I feel it's important to share our experience and basically how we got to this point. My husband, Doug, and I bought the property on Little Sister Road in October of 2020. It was a dream come true. We bought it from the Johannesson Family Trust. They were original homesteaders to Sister Bay and owned the property as well as the property to the north of us for 95 years. We learned that both properties were less than 20,000 square feet with very old cottages, and they were grandfathered for R1 zoning construction. Before we closed on the property, we contacted the village and spoke extensively with Bo, the administrator at the time, and with also Janelle to help us understand shoreline zoning and setbacks. Bo confirmed that we were R1 shoreline zoning. Doug and I told our family, we joked that it was our hope that the Roberts family would own this property and the home that we planned to build and surpass the 95-year record of the Johannessons. I have lived in Wisconsin my entire life, up until we sold our family home of 32 years in September of 2024. Frankly, we needed to sell our property in order to afford this construction project. Doug and I have been vacationing in Door County for 40 plus years with our two kids, now their spouses, and our grandchildren. And it was always our dream to own property. Originally, we were working with Great Northern Construction. We had some unfortunate family personal events, including my sister's passing shortly after we purchased the property, so we intentionally delayed building. It ended up not being a good fit for us with Great Northern, so we spoke to several builders and decided to move forward with Mark Wege. Every single builder that we spoke to who came out to our property said that the 14 to 15 foot steep sloped lot would require an exposed foundation in back with a walkout. Mark and his draftsman Wes prioritized their disability access and improved those plans. Our proposed plans, by the way, have 2,530 square feet on the main floor, which is an exposed ranch, 1,761 square feet finished in the lower level, which is our basement and our foundation. That total is 4,291 square feet. And I'd like to note well below the 6,500 square feet that Ms. Schmelzer says is a possible home size on our lot, according to page 4 of our staff notes. We signed building contracts with Mark this past July, and in late August, he had meetings with Ms. Schmelzer to get a zoning permit. We plan to begin construction in fall of 2024. Honestly, from the beginning, this process was very tough, and I'm being as diplomatic as possible here. Imagine our shock when we were told by Ms. Schmelzer that she considered our lot undeveloped. We were closing on the sale of our Wisconsin home soon and moved all of our belongings into storage facilities. And we were told that we were not being allowed developed zoning, which then would have required a 70-foot setback from the high water mark. Keep in mind, our lot is less than 20,000 square feet. This back and forth continued for weeks. Then she made a concession and said we could have a 54-foot setback from the high water mark instead of 70 feet. We hired our attorney, Dan Goronsky. He wrote a letter challenging this, and on October 30th, we received an email that I would like to just read a portion of the spirit of how we've been communicated with. You can see the whole thing here, but what Julie says is, I think we both can agree the zoning code is not clear in what is a developmental pattern, and admittedly, it would be difficult to defend if challenged, absent a clear definition. As such, the way the code is currently written, the setback recently proposed on the site plan provided to me can be approved at this time. However, I cannot approve the height of the building. The building is limited to 35 feet minus anything above the roof, such as a chimney. I guess there's really nothing left here as interpretation or reasoning, and there's always a confrontation as far as challenges. And I do think that is what has astonished me the most, because we expected the coordination with the village to be smooth, professional process, since we were educated by the village in 2020 about our zoning requirements. We did our homework with the village in 2020 when we even purchased the property. We certainly did not expect varied interpretations of the zoning code, being undeveloped, being developed, various setbacks, back and forth. Doug is retired. I worked full time. We expected this to be a joyous process and work in step with the village on the same side of the desk, if you will, versus this constant turmoil. We have worked and saved our whole lives in order to build this home in Sister Bay. We are not trying to build this for rental property. This will be our home and a place for our family to gather. We are asking you for a fair solution by granting this variance. And I truly feel, and I apologize, if any of you experience the same situation, you would hope for some understanding and a reasonable solution to the matter too. Again, our hope is that you see we have a hardship due to the God-given slope of this property, and measuring the height of our home from the back and the lowest part of our property creates this hardship. Please allow us a variance so that we can move forward with our life. I thank you very much, and I will now have Doug make his comments.
Hi, everybody. I'm Doug Roberts.
Mr. Roberts, could you raise your right hand, please?
I certainly can.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Well, again, Dan has already discussed the basis for which we're seeking this variance appeal, which is due to the unique features of our lot and not something personal to us. However, having said that, I do want to address this board with something that is very personal to me. I have a prosthetic leg, and I'm offended by Ms. Schmelzer's assumptions and ideas on how I might better get around my own house and property. And maybe I shouldn't have stairs or a walkout basement. She has acted incredibly unprofessional during our communications with her over the past several months. And her statements shown on page 61 of the packet regarding my disability warrant legal action under the American Disabilities Act, which we are strongly considering. She states that, and I'll quote, if elevation changes are a mobility concern, the owner may want to consider a one-level home instead of a home with stairs, or forego the sliding doors on the lowest level, which open to the steep slope by the water, unquote. My prosthetic leg is a result of a car accident that nearly ended my life, and for Ms. Schmelzer to make light of my needs and suggest I shouldn't design a house with stairs is cruel and offensive. In fact, stairs are very manageable with my disability. It's slopes that are very difficult for me. And the proposed walkout of our house leads to a relatively flat grade from our rear walkout to the shoreline. It's from 601 at the patio down to 597. Backfilling or eliminating the walkout would actually make the slope significantly worse. And I believe she should be fired for making such incorrect, offensive, and discriminatory comments in her role as village administrator just to persuade denial of a simple variance. And I'm appalled that the village board would even continue to retain someone like this. I find it ridiculous that this has even gotten to this point when you consider how the Door County zoning administrator and the current Sister Bay inspector consider overall height. They don't use the rear height only interpretation that Ms. Schmelzer has chosen to use. They use a front to rear average for overall height, and our home would be in compliance if those people were reviewing our zoning permit. The proposed height of our home is in violation only due to the slope of our lot and Ms. Schmelzer's unique interpretation of the code, which is clearly burdensome to us. Our single-story ranch house and exposed foundation by her interpretation is 14 feet tall before we lay a single brick at the front foundation. That only allows 21 feet remaining to work with from the top of the foundation to the highest roof peak. Complying with this would dictate a specific limiting roof and/or house design, which code is not meant to dictate. I truly think this roof height issue is trivial, and for Ms. Schmelzer to put such an extraordinary amount of time and effort in to persuade you to reject our variance request just further proves the fact that she has had a vendetta against us. Other Door County municipalities measure height differently and have allowed homes that do exceed the 35 feet rear only height measurement because they use an average height. Furthermore, when viewing our proposed house from Little Sister Road, as Dan said, it's 7 feet 5 inches below the maximum. And when viewing it from the lake, the views would be significantly blocked by over 50 75-foot tall trees. 2 feet 11 inches of extra roof height won't even be noticeable due to the trees blocking the view. And finally, none of our neighbors on Little Sister Road have raised any objections. So what would denying our request for a height variance really be accomplishing in the big picture of things? And finally, as Dan has already shown, the burdensome factors such as ice dams, as well as the potential erosion and drainage issues from backfilling, are far more negative and detrimental to the community and adjacent neighbors than the extra 2 feet 11 inch roof height, which has no detrimental impact to anyone. This is why we're simply asking for a variance to allow our proposed roof height. So again, I thank you all for hearing me out.
Yes. Attorney Goronsky, if he wants to call any other witnesses.
Attorney Goronsky, do you want to call any other witnesses?
He's probably muted. Janelle, can he be unmuted?
Yeah, I'm asking him to unmute right now.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you.
Do you have anybody else that you want to call at this time?
Not necessarily that I need to call, but statements from the general public. Is that after, or do I need to call people from the general public to make comments?
First, Tom will summarize the letters that were received, and then it'll be the general public.
Okay. You know, I think I'd like Mark Waggy to speak before we get to letters.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Maggie, I don't know if you can unmute yourself, but if you can, raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Ah, I can hear you. Good. Very good, thank you.
Hi, everybody.
How do you spell your last name again?
It's Waeghe.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like me to go ahead? Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Hey, I've been working up in the Door County Peninsula for, better part of 2 decades, and built in Sister Bay and, virtually every other municipality up there over the years. And everybody does, as was mentioned earlier, average front and back. And it's not uncommon to have a segment of the house, say for instance, the back of the house be 40 feet and the front of the house be 30, in average at 35. And the way that the village's interpretation is, you would virtually be eliminating the ability of a homeowner to build a 2-story on a walkout lot. You would not be able to physically do it and meet that 35-foot requirement. But the lot that the Roberts own, actually suggested to them at the beginning that we would put in a 10-foot basement versus a 9-foot basement. What that would do is allow you to raise the front of the house a little bit more, lowering the grade of your driveway coming in. They were already 2 feet above the height of the existing cottage that's there. This would put it 3 feet above it, had it gone with the 10-foot basement, and decrease the slope of that driveway. As you know, a lot of those driveways are pretty treacherous getting on. But one point I'd like to make, if I could, is if you drew a vertical line from the back of the lake house, which is a section of the house closest to the water, you would need to measure 32 feet laterally towards the front of the road to get to that 3711 height. Something that I've never seen before. And I know the code mentioned segment. It doesn't really, to me, that wouldn't be a segment, but to me, it's unusual that you would have to measure 32 feet away to get that height measurement. And that measurement that they're going to is a 27-foot ridge line that you're seeing from the front of the house. But in terms of the roof design and the steepness of it, the 1012 is very necessary here. The front of the house has 5 valleys in a saddle. Anyone who knows, when you live in the woods, when you have valleys, where 2 roof lines come together, it's a great area to collect debris and get ice damming and back up water in your roof system and so on. And generally will always require physical cleaning. Anything less than a 10, get down to an 8 or less than that in the valley, or someone's going up there to get the debris out of the valleys. But so it's a little unusual that and restrictive that that measurement is taken the way it is. The lot truly is 14 or 15 feet from front of the building envelope to the back. So anywhere you start in there, they took up as much of that flat area as you could in the front with their garage, which required the body of the home to be a little bit further back. You're starting out at 14 feet and you're going up from there. So, very difficult to get those heights. But let's see. I think that's probably all I had to say on that note, but anybody have any questions?
Yes, I do. How would it go about removing the building that's there, and what impact would that have on the lot?
Well, if you had one of the surveys, you would see the main survey you might have as the existing building shown as a kind of a great outline, but the village has requirements for their demolition. This one requires a permit because it's over the minimum square footage. So it would be disconnected, all your utilities would be disconnected, it would be inspected, and then it would be raised. And all the debris moved.
Well, that's my question is, how would it be raised and what effect that would have on the topography of the lot, if any?
Well, that cottage where it sits now is built on probably the flattest part of the lot. And then that would be part of that where it is now would be partially in the front of the house, within the body of the house, and some of it would be outside of the house. So the new home would occupy part of that area.
Okay.
Oh, sure, we can. Okay, you have to ask if Attorney Goransky wants to call anyone else, and then we'll go to those others.
Okay. Attorney Goronsky, do you want to call anyone else? If you have anybody else to call them now. And then the next step will be I'll read the letters.
No, sir, Mr. Sadler, go ahead and read the letters and open up to public comment. Thank you.
Okay.
And you can basically say that, you can read the one letter and say that all those names that it's the identical letter.
Right.
And then there's one more letter that you have to read after you read that
Okay.
out.
The letter, well, I'll read letter one. It is from Michael and Sarah Mercurio. It says, "Dear board members, Doug and Ellen Roberts own the property located at 10631 Little Sister Road in Sister Bay, and they have filed plans for the construction of a new home at that location. It is our understanding that an appeal of the village zoning administrator's interpretation on the heights of the proposed new home at 10631 Little Sister Road is scheduled for public hearing. Well, this was on December. We own the immediately adjacent property at 10637 Little Sister Road, and we have been provided with a copy of the Roberts appeal package. We are writing in support of the Roberts and their appeal. Not only is their proposed new home consistent with the existing neighboring homes, but their home will also be a wonderful addition to the neighborhood." Then that format is basically used by every other letter writer.
You want me to say who those are? Would that be easiest?
Mhm.
Okay,
And in fact, in most of the letters, the area for their address was a blank line, and they just wrote in their address and signed it. So as it came, it's hard to read who signed the second letter.
that's David and Randall Johnson.
Oh.
David and Randall Johnson.
David and Randall Johnson, okay.
PA and RM Downey.
PA and RM Downey is the third letter. John J. Stolenwork is the fourth letter. Lance and Bridget Crane is the next letter. Paul and Kathy Luber is the next letter. David and Carol Frickman. And Nicholas and Catherine Garretts.
And
I got- This is an email. It's dated February 17th. And it's from Dave and Carol Frickman. And it says, "Greetings. We have a home on Little Sister Road just down the road from Doug and Ellen Roberts' property. My home, like their proposed home, is situated on a slope, necessitating a walkout lower floor and a single level home facing the road. I hope you can see the logic of the design, which presents only a single level towards the road, which is well within the height restriction. We hope you can grant permission to Doug and Ellen so they can get on with building their dream home, one that will fit nicely on Little Sister Road and in Sister Bay. Sincerely."
Okay, so now you ask if anybody in the audience would like to comment in favor of granting the request.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to comment on this particular issue tonight?
If Paula wants to, Paula, can you unmute yourself, please? Okay,
Hi.
Hi, my name's Paula Anschutz,
Paula,
and
could you raise your right hand, please?
Okay, yeah.
I just want
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
I will probably be jumping around a little because a lot of what I had written out to say has already been said, so I'll try not to double down too much. But just to share how I met the Roberts, they came into the Sister Bay Bowl last summer, with their family and grandkids and introduced themselves and said they were aware of my efforts to build recycled affordable housing in Sister Bay. They were adamant that they wanted to donate this cottage to those efforts, however it could be used. And I was impressed and excited. And this cottage would come down the exact same road that all 8 cottages came out of Little Sister. So we exchanged information. I went back to bartending and we were in touch in the next couple months. But they did get cold feet. The administrator informed them that the cottage couldn't be moved. It could not go down the road, and that they couldn't get a building or a moving permit, which when I moved those buildings, there was no permit requirement. And as far as I know in the code, that has not changed, that any building can actually be moved. And I know that that cottage could be moved because of the 8 that I moved, and I had measured it. So they are people who adore Door County. And I wrote something today, and I almost didn't speak for fear of retribution on my project. But I knew it was the right thing to do, and that is why I'm speaking. And even listening to them, there are so many people in our community going through what they're going through right now, which is an administration telling you one thing, interpreting the code to suit their own opinions, saying one thing and changing that. And it is unbecoming and it is embarrassing for our village for people to be treated this way. We ask people to come to our community, and when they love it so much, they decide they want to assimilate and be part of that. Then we treat them this way. And I think any administrator, their job is to interpret the code. It is not to express opinions. It is their job to work with people to meet the code. So that is why I am telling you this background, which obviously is not finding of fact, and it is not talking about the actual criteria. But these people are not here to build a second or third home. They sold their only home to move here and be part of this community. So I think everyone was very well spoken tonight. And part of what I want to say is just that looking at this staff report, you can very clearly see the opinions in here with words such as simply if the owner's preference, stating things like a home which is quite spacious. That is not something that she should even be commenting on. A home 75 foot wide and 87 deep, which is 6,500 square foot home, just suggesting what they should do with their property. That is also, and I know the lawyer said this, I don't have the same platform he's coming from, but just as someone who is also, who's, you know, manages a business downtown, who has tried to do housing, there is a guide and there is a code, and that is black and white, and it is supposed to be delivered to us in the same manner every time. Not saying interesting though the adjacent neighbor's new home was built, blah, 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 blah. There is a reason you hire a designer and a builder. They are the professionals. We would never know the details that Mark outlined. For instance, when those angles come together and you have to clean out leaves, that is burdensome to these two people. That erosion and the 32-foot distance to the road causing a steeper driveway and the snow melt. Again, we leave those decisions to the professionals, not someone who is there to just talk about code. I think it was very important that Dan talked about the cherry-picked info and that we are talking about an area variance, because that was the only part when I'm reading through, the only part of the 5 criteria that they don't meet is that they are rendered with no use of the property. Clearly they can still build a home, but that does not apply to an area variance. And the administrator clearly left that out in her explanation, which is critical to the argument. Again, the personal opinions gala of a beautiful home, that is inappropriate. Again, Another thing that was not brought up is that they are keeping trees. She even told me that she would not allow any more removal of trees, even for the removal of the cabin. So it may not be able to get out because they are abiding by the code and the tree removal, whereas their neighbors have not. Much of the Little Sister Resort property was clear cut, an old chestnut tree, beautiful old maples. They are doing their due diligence in preserving those trees, which is a requirement of the village. And that does require a steeper roof to allow the snow to drop. I think they've done a very good job in designing this home. And the fact that the administrator ever commented on the owner's disability, that it's so inappropriate. It's so inappropriate and actually illegal. And he knows his needs, and I think they worked to minimize the violation of the code and the need for a variance while also meeting those needs. Again, I agree with everything that was previously said, but I'm trying not to restate too much. When she was talking about the general, the public interest, number one, after being there for almost a year and a half in removal of those cottages, it's all people who live there, or they were looking for Fred and Fuzzies and were devastated that was gone. It is not a highly trafficked road. And if her argument is people might want to see the water, it's 27 feet from the road. So they'll see the water just the same as any other house that was on that list. Again, that is not an applicable argument. Yeah, again, I think that in some forms, we need to let the professionals do that work. Building height is normally measured from the front. This is not excessive, and it is within reason to look at this and say, hey, is this reasonable? And I would like to end with just that. Number one, R1 is a district preservation of intent that is meant for single family homes, and this is. And it's no one's job to tell them what they need in that home, but that is the intent of this district. Unique circumstances, exceptional circumstances. Dan laid that out very clearly, that there is exceptional circumstances because every lot is different. Another thing she didn't mention was the amount of level area, which is different on every property. And suggesting that they don't build at the lot line, or sorry, at the setback, that's what a setback is. It's telling you where you can build according to code, and no one should be saying you can't build there because that's going to cause a reasonable hardship. It's their right to build there, and there is a reasonable hardship in that location. And that goes right into hardship. So again, on the area of variance, they do have a hardship that they can not change without being reasonably burdened, which is very clear that they are. Preservation of property rights kind of blends into what I just said, which is that they have the right to build on their property, and by not granting them this variance, it would restrict those rights. And it is not affecting anyone in the adjacent area, as they have all endorsed this project. And again, anybody from the road, if they see it from the water, they're trespassing, or they are in the water, which it should not matter. And from the road, it is 27 feet tall, 27 feet 5 inches. So in the end, again, I know that finding of facts is how you actually make your determination, but I would implore you to also just think about how we are treating people that we have asked to come to our village, and that it is not one person's interpretation of the code that matters. Her interpretation versus what is actually in practice, which clearly stated by the builder Mark tonight, is averaging the front and the back. And he explained why that is necessary. It's our job, or it's the administration's job, to work with people and not fight them every step of the way, to clearly say this is not allowed, but this is what we can do, and this is how we're going to work with you. And I think you can find a reasonable agreement tonight.
Okay,
Yes, if anybody else wants to testify.
is there anybody else who's a visitor to the site wishing to comment to the board?
One, Chris,
There's nobody else online.
Chris Hess wants to testify.
Oh,
If there's nobody else online, do them first.
yeah.
No, nobody's raising their hands, so.
Great.
Okay.
Raise your
Mr. Heck,
hand.
would you raise your right hand, please? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm not going to speak to the inappropriateness of the administrator. I think that is beyond this group's ability to deal with. I think that that should be addressed to the village board. I agree with most of what they've said about the inappropriateness of it. I sat for many years on the plan commission, and for many years, the height was the average height, especially on the slope lot. It was never the lowest point. I think that if we look back at the previous administrations or administrators, they always took the average, right? I'm involved in most of the, or a lot of these building projects in my role as the fire chief. There is nothing wrong with what they are asking for. In fact, if we filled it in, or if they had to fill it in and build a retaining wall, it would create more of a hardship for us for public safety. From the plan commission side, for years, what we were looking for was steep pitch roofs because it allowed the architecture and the builder to design a roof that was more visually appealing as opposed to a lower pitch roof that took away that ability from the architecture and the designer to build something that was attractive. If we say that she is correct at 35 feet from the very lowest point to the very highest point, many homes in this community would not meet that benchmark, including my own, which is a very simple 2-story, single-family residence with a walkout basement. And I only have a 9/12 pitch roof. We would significantly hamstring simple residential development going forward if we say that she is correct. I believe based on the number of buildings that are in this community that have been built in the past, by the actions of the 3 or 4 previous administrators, that she is in fact incorrect in her interpretation. I would implore you to please grant this variance.
Okay, now I ask if there's anybody else who wants to testify in favor of it. And for one more time. And then you ask if there's anybody opposed.
Is there anybody else that would like to testify in favor of this variance application? Is there anybody who would like to speak in opposition to this application? Okay, at this point,
Can,
The attorney is wanting to talk.
Yeah, sorry.
Now Dan will
Yeah.
make.
There are people raising their hand that's on a different screen that
Okay, let me-
wanted to speak in support who have not been, were not called on.
I'm
But-
glad you stepped in and told us that.
Okay,
So
this-
I see a few gentlemen who are raising their hands.
Mr.
okay,
Sullivan,
gentlemen, iPad 197. Can you unmute yourself? Okay, you can speak.
He was speaking to me?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. My name is John Stonemark. I live with my family at 10673 Little Sister. And I've been listening to the discussion here.
Mr.
Pardon?
Stolliver, if I can ask you, you had your right hand raised. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So
I
help you
do. So help me God. Anyway, I believe it's really been said. The neighbors, myself, were all in favor of this. We certainly hope that you will give the Roberts the variance. 2 feet is certainly not noticeable. And anyway, it's a great enhancement for the city of the village of Sister Bay and for our neighborhood. So thank you very much for having this hearing. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Do we have anybody else on there who's got their,
I don't see anybody else. Is there anyone else that you see, Dan?
Dan, on your end, is there anybody?
Not on my end. After there's any oppositions, I'd like to say one last quick word and and hopefully wrap it up.
Now you can see he can make his closing statement.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
perfect timing for your closing statements.
Well, again,
Well,
that's great.
yeah, your final words, but include your closing statement with it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sadler. Yeah, it's just my closing statement. Again, I thank everyone for coming tonight. I very much appreciate it. I know it's again time out of your busy schedules and your night, so I appreciate it. But again, I think again, with what we've presented, with what the community has presented, we believe we very much satisfy the requirements for this variance. Again, we believe it's consistent with the intent of the regulations. We don't think it's in violation of any health, safety, aesthetics. You've actually heard from people that it enhances the health and safety and aesthetics of the community. The property is indeed unique as it's generally applied to others in the area. There's a hardship that exists because it makes our compliance with the code burdensome. It's necessary to preserve our property rights and that we have the right to build within our setbacks, and for the village to suggest otherwise is inappropriate. And again, there is no detriment to the of granting us a variance. No one has spoken against this. We have a lot of support, and we thank the Roberts thank everyone for that. So, but again, thank you everyone for coming. Again, we hope this is sufficient for the board to grant this variance.
Okay, at this time, I'll ask any board members who have any questions for Dan.
With this apparently new gag order on me, am I allowed to speak?
Sure, yeah,
You
you're
can speak
good.
during
You're
public
good
hearing,
up
you just
until
can't during
we're getting close to you. You're gonna be muted in a little bit.
No, but my only comment is, I think the fire chief's testimony is, to me, was key in that with what they're proposing would actually enhance safety. So that and the lady from the bowl, I thought was interesting that when they were moving all those other houses, and I remember watching some of them go across the road, apparently there were no permits required for that. Now all of a sudden there's a permit required to move this one. So that kind of ties into the whole thing of we're kind of going this way and that way with interpretation, or the villages, and specifically apparently the administrator is. That's my comment. Thank you.
Okay. So, Pat, any questions for the attorney?
I don't have any questions, no.
Okay.
But I would say to what Terry said, I think that our administrator is very, very deeply involved with her job. But she inherited a real kettle of fish from the prior administrator, and there are things that were done left, right, and sideways on whim, and it's a tough situation. It's a no-win situation. I certainly am not opposed to having a variance here. My concern is that opening the door to people just taking it upon themselves to do what they want
Okay, hold that
causes
thought.
problems.
Yeah, we need to close, and we'll have that discussion. We need to close the public portion first, and then
Fine.
get into our own discussion. I will close the public hearing at. Can't read it. Huh? 8:05? At 8:05 PM. And now we'll open the discussion amongst the board members to work towards a decision. And
Mr. Chairman, I'm handing out the decision document that you can go through and use in your discussion. Handing that out to all of the members here. You could pass one of those down, I appreciate it. Sure.
Thank you, Terry.
And Mr. Goransky, I believe, was provided that by Janelle. I received a copy of the email and sent it. So that's what the board members are gonna be looking at when evaluating the testimony in light of the the standards required. So go ahead.
Okay. Pat, as you were saying, you had a comment that leaning towards in favor of the variance, but what impact, if I understood you, what impact would have in setting it up for the rest of the village for future use?
I made a lot of notes as people were talking, and I feel that these people need and should have a variance. I just hope that we're not setting precedents, because if they can go 2 feet higher, then the next person can maybe go 4. But we've seen a lot of that go on in the village with the buildings. I mean, it's an evident situation that the arrogance of, I can top that. I don't know how to draw a final line on some of that pushing the envelope. But I do feel that these folks have certainly proved, and their friends and their builder and their attorney have certainly proved that this variance is, they are certainly worthy of it, and it will help the area, and there is no negative to it.
Ladies? You,
I'm in favor of granting a variance.
So am
me too.
Fantastic. Crystal.
Yeah.
Crystal.
Let me get on.
So can you please unmute yourself?
Yes, I also agree that we should grant the Roberts a variance.
Okay, do you have any other comments, Crystal?
I think that the previous administrations also were kind of lack. I dealt with Zeke before, and he was, but we should just give these people, because they showed us that they do have some issues that we can help them with, and they deserve that variance for that place.
One comment. I do think that variances are by each.
Correct.
When somebody comes in and has a problem, that's how we do it. It's not gonna, I agree with you, sometimes it opens the door, but it should be by each.
It should be on its own weight.
Right.
Meetings for you.
Exactly. So I don't think we need to worry that way that we're gonna have 40-foot height measurements. That we're gonna have to vary.
I think we need to write the code
differently.
specifically
Yeah.
how it's supposed to be, so there's no wrong interpretation.
Well, we can do that as a recommendation from us.
So the board.
And the board, we can work something, do that outside of this and send it to them. Okay, and this,
Get on that, Tom.
well, I think as far as the language goes in this, with the variance, is
So you want to start on page 2?
Yeah.
And go your conclusions of law, and then just say the requested variance does or does not satisfy all of the following tests. So you're gonna say does if you're gonna grant it.
yeah, it is consistent with the purpose and the intent of the regulations.
Okay,
For
so
all,
we got that. Okay,
yeah.
it's consistent.
What else?
Okay, now if you go to 2 for the exceptional circumstances. So you're gonna say the board finds that there are or are not unique circumstances. Are you gonna say there are? Okay,
Yeah.
and what are those circumstances?
The grade of the
Topography.
topography of the land.
The topography, okay. Of the lot, anything else?
The-
I don't think there needs to be.
No, let's make it simple.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so now you're in hardship. Okay, you have to say the board finds that there is or is not hardship. You're gonna say is hardship, right?
Yes, is
Because
the
you're-
one.
okay. Then you have to, that hardship should be delineated. So what is the hardship?
Well, it's the topography of the land again.
Is that okay, Randy?
That's okay.
Okay,
We could put something about accommodating the topography of the land.
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
accommodating the topography of the land would be difficult. Anything else, or leave it at that?
Short and sweet.
Okay. All right, now you're on to number 4. Okay, the board finds that the granting of the variance is or is not necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights. You're gonna say is, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Because it'll allow use of the property,
okay,
you know.
okay. Then 5, absence of detriment. You have to find if it's will or will not materially impair or be contrary to the purpose and spirit of the zoning code
Will
of
not.
public interest. Will not materially, right?
Well, will that materially impact anybody?
Okay. So then. All right, now we need a motion by somebody, and that motion is done already. If you want to change it, you can, but that's the motion. You want something similar to that.
In bringing in all
read
those
that?
points in the motion.
Can't we just
We
say
need
we
to,
make
can't
that?
we just make a motion?
You can just say so moved and we'll put this motion in there.
See?
I'll make a motion to accept the variance.
Okay,
And I'll second it.
okay.
Do a voice or
We have to take a roll call.
a
Roll
roll
call,
call
yeah.
vote.
Okay, Sadler,
Yes,
Legoff.
Yes.
Good, you muted yourself. Okay, Hecht,
Yes.
Durin,
Yes.
okay, and Wisner.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
motion's carried.
So now. Now you can adjourn.
Just real quick before you adjourn, can I just ask, and one, thank you, but 2, can I ask just a point of procedure? Obviously, the Roberts have had these plans set for approval for, in front of the village administrator for approval for quite some time. Given this variance, we would hope that this gets approved as soon as possible so they can start the construction of their new home.
It was just approved.
But you have to get a written notice.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
the written determination will have to come.
So Randy, could you talk to Julie tomorrow?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
Okay, so now you need a motion to adjourn.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned at 8:14.
Thank you all for participating.
Thank you for showing up all the time.
Ellen, if you want to unmute yourself, I see you waving.
Heartfelt thank you to the entire committee for listening to us and understanding us. Doug and I cannot wait to be residents of Sister Bay. So again, thank you for hearing our plight and for supporting us. We
Thanks
really
very much.
appreciate it.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
All the best. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.